Welcome to the Veterans Who Build show. Today's guest, we have a 6-year Oregon National Guard veteran, someone who spent a lot of time managing construction projects, both for the government sector and the private sector. Today, he is president of Pliris and FAFO Developments, doing a lot of amazing work for veterans in the general space of the built environment. If you're a veteran, please check him out. A shout out to our subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. To our listeners, thank you for listening. A reminder to please subscribe to our channels, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. A quick shout out to our sponsor, Jet.Build. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Royal Mortier. Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build. Welcome to the Veterans Who Build show. Royal, thanks so much for joining us today, man.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
Where are you calling in from? Where's home base for you?
We live in Pensacola Beach, Florida now, so it's rough.
Nice.
It's a nice mid 80s with a gentle breeze and the ocean. So
that's awesome, man. I'm gonna live that vicariously through you in this conversation. Yeah. Big fan of that environment. All right, man. Let's kick off with your formal introduction. Royal Mortier served for 6 years as 11B Infantry and Oregon Army National Guard. Royal is a husband first, father second, the president of Pleris, Pleris Plans, and Pleris Forensics. Royal is also the founder of FAFO Developments, and last but not least, a former wrestler, now training in jiu-jitsu. Royal, I'm excited to dive into all of those different verticals that you have. However, as you know, and as our listeners know, we like to start in chronological order. Let's kick off with where you grew up and what led you in your childhood to serving.
Yeah, I grew up in Oregon. To make everybody feel better, last week I was in Oregon and it was a balmy 45 degrees and rainy. So, it was, I do get to have to get away sometimes from this to go experience what it's like in other states.
Doing your dues.
Right. So I grew up in the Northwest, predominantly Northwest, for literally almost 40 years. And it was only a couple years ago we moved to the Gulf Breeze, Pensacola Beach area of Florida. And grew up Portland, Eugene, went to Oregon State University for my civil engineering degree. And it's, it was a fun time. Interesting childhood in that, single mom through most of my childhood, things that went along with that being, being with food stamps, Section 8 housing. We lived in a car for a couple of years of my childhood. And then when I became a teenager, I went to live with my dad for a short bit. And then also in between there, I lived with my grandfather. My grandfather was 20 years Navy. And, I know he had a great career because he barely ever talked about it. And, anytime we brought it up, that was a past life. So he was a great man in that aspect. I know he served in all the major wars and was always a prime example to me and a mentor to me. So, that was a big example to me of serving in the military, serving our country, or in the case of the National Guard, serving your state and your country. As I grew older, I had an older brother. He also served in the National Guard, and he really enjoyed it. And so again, that just provided an example of it. My paternal grandfather, I talked with him. He had served in the National Guard in Detroit, Michigan, in his early years. And this again was during a draft during one of the major wars. And he basically just kept his nose clean, served in the National Guard, and did that as a way to essentially avoid the draft. As long as he was doing something else to serve our state or to serve our community, he was able to stay out from getting drafted. And so all of those things just kind of weighed on me, and I ended up signing up for the Army National Guard my junior year of high school. I did what's called a split op program. So I actually went to basic training between my junior and senior year of high school, and really just, it was a great experience. I enjoyed it. It provided a lot of other opportunities for me and some other things going later on in life and post college. And, there's still people from my unit that I still connect with, especially in the jiu-jitsu community. Those guys that served in the military have definitely remained prevalent. They try and stay healthy, and jiu-jitsu is a great way to do that. And it's been awesome. Sometimes I travel back to Oregon, and I walk into a jiu-jitsu gym, and there's some guys that I served with that are still in their 40s and now even into their 50s that are on the mats getting after it. So it's really awesome to see.
So, in high school, when you joined the Guard, were they recruiting there, or is that something that you actively went in enlisted for?
Oh, I just walked right in. I was a recruiter's dream. He didn't have to sell me on anything. So
That's amazing.
He just went, well, let's see where your ASVABs are at. And I was actually I was fairly bright as a kid. So I scored really well on the ASVABs, and he was like, what do you want to do? And I looked at my brother, or I called my brother, and I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, infantry. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. We'll just do that. So
Yeah.
I didn't research anything. I didn't know the contracts. None of it. I walked in, I mean, it was days after my 17th birthday. I walked in there and just signed on the dotted line and came back and just told my dad and my stepmom, hey, I joined the National Guard. Like they need you to sign for me.
What was their reaction?
They weren't going to talk me out of it. I mean, that was kind of the aspect of it. And I think they were, for the most part, supportive of the fact that, having been raised primarily by a single mom, and then, the rough childhood situation, I was a little bit of a wild child too. I kept my nose clean for the most part. I didn't stay with the drug or the alcohol thing. I stayed clean. I was really big into wrestling and just doing big things, doing what I could. I worked a lot. And so, I think they just saw it more than anything. It was an adventure and some discipline for me, and just something I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Were you the youngest person there at the Guard?
Well, yeah. So for my unit, I was the only person that got sent for a split op situation. So yeah, in my unit, I was definitely the youngest. And then, I was a wrestler. I had a massive neck. I still have a massive neck. 18 and 18 and a half dress shirts, they're kind of slim pickings. So when you got that neck. So I was in when we transitioned from the M60 to the 240, and pretty much all my time, that's what I carried. I got big legs and a big neck, and I can pack a lot of stuff. So that's pretty much what I had the whole time. So
that's awesome, man. So walk us through that process of you enlist. Now you're off to basic training. What does that look like, especially coming in as 17-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I pretty much wrapped up my junior year, and I think I flew out that weekend. I mean, it was very short. I think junior year wrapped up Wednesday, and by Saturday or Sunday, I was on a plane I was up in MEPS. I went through MEPS, and they just, in process you, and then they go, okay, you're sitting in a hotel for the next day or two, and then you're on a plane. Luckily, when I was at MEPS, there were guys there were people there that I was talking with that had been sitting at MEPS waiting for their basic slot for weeks, just sitting in a hotel, but they were not infantry. So luckily ours was just a nice production line. So I walked in, I sat in that hotel for maybe a couple of days. My older brother, and I was MEPS in Portland, Oregon. My older brother lived in Portland, Oregon. And so, he would come and we'd go out to dinner, and he'd bring me back to the hotel, but it was kind of a very small radius they allowed you to leave. And then I was on a plane within a couple of days and off to Atlanta, Georgia, onto a bus that was my first time ever on a plane. First time. And they pick you up by a bus, they take you to Fort Benning, and you sit there and you're in processing for maybe a week, and then you're off. So I got back, I think the weekend before my senior year started. So it was a it was a quick flip. So it was pretty much my whole summer. Basic training was a blast. You know, it sucked while it happened, but now you look back and you're like, hey, that was freaking nothing compared to some of the other things we did in training and other things that have gone on in life. It was more just setting a standard and listening to orders than anything. I will say I had some fantastic drill sergeants. You know, it's always interesting when you're sitting there, like you can see how different drill sergeants are interacting with their people. We had some very hard drill sergeants. All of them were rangers. Some of them have been ranger instructors as well. And they were all fair. I think got yelled at maybe the first week or two. And then it was, now we're going to talk to you like adults. And we're going to make sure you understand how to execute and understand and be productive without having to be yelled at. So it's always good when you know that your leadership cares. So that was awesome. That was awesome.
I mean, that's really cool. That's your kind of memory takeaway from it. And you said something that resonated with me, and I just kind of had a chuckle where, you know, thinking back on basic training and being there in that moment, feeling like it's, you know, the hardest thing that you've ever faced. I mean, I think largely because of the extreme kind of differences in environments, right? Like before that moment, you're a civilian in high school. Now all of a sudden you're, you know, learning principles that you otherwise really didn't know. And then after that experience and continuation into, you know, your military career, looking back on it, it's like a fun time almost, right? Like a nothing, right? Like very, very easy in comparison and relativity to other things you've experienced. It was an interesting call out and something that I could absolutely resonate with.
Yeah. And, you know, in being a wrestler, you know, there's the physical demand in wrestling. You know, I went to wrestling camps, significant physical demand with that. And so it was one of those things that was, you know, I was always a bigger kid. So, you know, hey, we're going to go run. That wasn't my strong suit. But hey, we're going to go do a bunch of pull-ups. We're going to do a bunch of push-ups. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to, you know, we had wrestling. We had a wrestling. It's literally an entire day where we were out in the bark mulch and just wrestling with each other. And we worked our way. Basically, they ran it like a bracket. And I know I didn't make it in the finals because we had two multi-time state champions in my unit, one from Montana and another one from Wyoming. And I was like, I think I lost to one of them, but in the round just before the finals. But you know, that's the fun stuff that you remember. But I mean, shoot, again, like you're with the, you know, not having a father figure most of my childhood, except for my grandfather and some other mentors that stepped in, and then just not having that as my typical everyday life, that form of discipline and the requirements and the fact that you're like, hey, you got to take care of yourself and the people to the left and your right, like at all times. Like that's important stuff to learn. So, and it was good to learn at 17. Like it shaped me for a whole different life trajectory.
Absolutely. So you get back senior year. Let's go to that state. What happens? What happens next?
Senior year was interesting. I was actually ranked pretty high for wrestling. My plan after high school was to go to Oregon State and wrestle for Oregon State and go to engineering school. About a week before districts, I was wrestling with one of our heavyweights, and he did what's called a belly to belly throw, and I posted, and so it was his weight and my weight all onto one arm. So blew up my arm. That's the easiest way I can explain it. So that again changed the trajectory for me, because then it kept me from, you know, I had significant surgery. It happened the day before my 18th birthday too. So that was fun.
Wow.
Almost went my entire childhood without a broken bone. So it was, you know, it changed the trajectory for a lot of things. As one of the things was, I could never get a medical waiver to go to my advanced training because I had these steel plates in my arm. So, and, you know, it impeded mobility and a variety of other things. So that made the rest of my career with the National Guard very interesting, in that I was essentially not able to complete the training to essentially become a full soldier. So it was like essentially being on the practice squad, right? And so I served out the rest of my time, and it was, it was rough because like my unit got activated at the end there, and I knew I was not going to be able to go with them. So, with that said, we lost quite a few guys. I was in, I was in right when 9/11 happened. I was already in. So it was, my unit was one of the first National Guard units to get worked up and sent over. And, it sucked. I had a lot of guys that I really cared about. There were guys there that were, sergeants and stuff there that were significant mentors to me. And I didn't get to go serve with them. That was the whole point, right? Stuff happens and you want to go stand by their side. So, but unfortunately we did lose quite a few of the guys in my group. Who knows if I would have been one of those. And so I guess I say sometimes a blessing and a curse, because, it would have been great to serve with them, but it also really sucked that, hey, I may not have come back. So really, just done what I can to honor veterans and work with them any way I can. And as we'll talk about with my current company, we donate house plans for veteran projects. And that's the best I can do right now. So
yeah, thank you for sharing that, man. I know that's not an easy thing to share. So yeah, thank you. Continuing in kind of order of your life story here, what was I guess commit periods like in senior year until you graduate? Yeah, we'll start with that and then flow into your undergrad degree.
Yeah. So really, I mean, the broken arm kind of changed a lot of trajectories for me. And, I ended up not going to Oregon State for wrestling. And, that was wrestling. And then with wrestling and the GI Bill is what I was counting on for paying for school. I was obviously hoping to get a wrestling scholarship, hoping, using GI Bill with the National Guard. And with me not being able to complete my advanced training, I no longer qualified for the GI Bill. You don't get that unless you complete your training requirements. And so I had to kind of put college on hold for a bit. I tried some community college stuff, but ended up not going full through on it, and really just worked construction and got after it in construction and worked my way up. It's kind of cool. I got to work with a former SOG guy, and he had a small construction company, and he took me under his wing, and I just started working in residential construction on all kinds of projects, all phases, and kind of got to learn that, to where then after a few houses, I was running, I was running aspects of it. It was more of a, hey, this needs to be done. It needs to be done by the end of this week. Okay. So it's either I'm doing it or I'm bringing on crews to help me do it, whatever it was. And, it worked out. It worked out really well. I say I pretty much lived at the job site. I literally rented a room in a house that was across the street from the homes that we were building. So that was nice. I woke up and went to work and worked construction until dinner time. And then to try and make extra money, I actually delivered pizzas at night. So it was from pretty much 6 a.m. until 9 to 10 o'clock at night. I was working, kept me out of trouble. But then I also, I also was able to build up a pretty good little savings, and I bought my first house. I bought my first house just after I turned 21, that worked out really well. And then I basically used the money I saved, and from that, the information I learned from working construction, and then the sweat equity that I built in that first house that I bought, because it was very much a fixer-upper, to pay for college. So
wow, good for you, man. That's really an amazing just story, right? Of work ethic, getting involved in the industry, figuring out a way to get to school on your own. Yeah. Congratulations. That's really awesome, man.
Yeah, and again, it was, I really lucked out. Gentleman's name was Don Hassey. He was a SOG gunner and just a crew chief for the choppers. And then he got me connected with, there was actually a pretty prominent SOG community right there in Eugene, which was kind of interesting. There was There's over a half dozen of them still alive there. So I got to meet them in person. You would have lunch with them or coffee. And I was working right by his side. So I just went with him and got to meet all these awesome guys. And it wasn't until really later I started reading up more on what SOG was, and holy crap, like those guys are legends, absolute legends. So
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. I love hearing those kinds of stories, right? You get involved with vets in AC industry, and then you grow your career working with them. So that's really cool. So what happens? What happens next? It sounds like you were able to. I mean, you just told us, right? You were able to work up some funds to start school. Walk us through that.
Yeah, I started back to college. So I did try and save money. The local community college had kind of the 2-year program to deal with all your undergrad backcore type stuff. So I worked and went to college, and actually, instead of working construction, I went to work for a home improvement store and learned a lot of lessons about service and processes and organization in that industry. It was really great run business. Not a Home Depot or Lowe's. It's called Jerry's, and anybody that's from Oregon knows Jerry's. And I could still tell you the value mission statement of that company from now, and I haven't worked there in 20 years or almost 20 years.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so they're fantastic company, great values, great processes, and learned a lot just about, like I said, just industry and delivery from them. And then I used my employee discount to its nth degree, because that's how I built the sweat equity in my rehab properties. So that worked out really well. And that was during the early 2000s, the big bubble coming up. So I started big bubble with real estate. So started buying some residential and rehabbing and going to school and working at the home improvement store. And then I only went to Oregon State my last 2 years, what they call pro school. And then I had to quit my jobs, but luckily I had built up enough equity in my properties that I was able to pull those funds out and literally work or go to school for 2 years straight, not having to worry about work, didn't have to worry about loans. I just went to school, and I basically just kind of paid for it all out of my nest egg. So then when I graduated, I was in 2009, which was a horrible time to be graduating with anything construction related. So the typical hire rate for engineers and construction managers at Oregon State was like 98%. I think we were like 30 in 2009. So I had multiple job offers rescinded my senior year, because I did an internship between my junior and senior year, was really, looking and trying to decide, did I want to go the construction management route, or did I want to go the actual engineering design route? Because that's some flexibility you have with the civil engineering degrees. You can kind of go either or. There's another degree called construction management or construction engineering management, and you don't have the ability to jump into the design realm. So I went multiple months. I think it was like, I graduated in early June. It wasn't until September I even received my first job offer. And so again, luckily I had a good nest egg. So, because I was just basically paying for everything out of my savings. So I got a job offer, and I got 2 job offers, and one of them, I referred them to my friend. He ended up taking that one because I knew it wasn't the right fit for me. And I took the other one, which was with the Department of Defense, and starting with the Corps of Engineers. And basically, I thought that was be a good fit for me, working with a military base, essentially as a civilian. And went to Reno, Nevada, was where I first started out, and kind of my first duty station, and just started managing construction projects. I managed a hospital, managed multiple projects on nearby military bases. So a big VA hospital remodel. I got moved out to Napa, California for a bit, and worked on a big bridge project there in Napa called it was like the Oxbow bypass and wine train bridge project. That was pretty fun. And lived in Sacramento, lived in a hotel in Sacramento for like 6 months, working in different projects around Sacramento and in their headquarter office. And then I had yeah. And then back to Reno for more and running stuff on the nearby military base up there and running construction projects and other stuff up there. And then I had an opportunity to, they have these small brain trusts is the easiest way I can describe it with the DoD. So they put together, like, at every headquarters, they have like, we have a small group that specializes in this. And they had a small group that specialized in construction estimating and risk analysis. And, that was stuff that was interest to me, but it was, it got me to a different area I'd never been to, and thought we'd try and give that a try. And it was a promotion. And so I put in for it and I got it. And that based me out of a little town called Walla Walla, Washington, and it's what it's called.
Yeah. Great names.
They're known for their sweet onions, and now becoming very, very well known for their wine. I love their wine. They're if you watch the recent Ghost of Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe talks about his winery called Doubleback. It's actually based in Walla Walla, Washington. So
Awesome.
his wife is from that area. So very cool. Very cool little spot. But I was just traveling an insane amount. I was traveling an insane amount with the construction management, and going up there, we kind of had a small group of subject matter experts. There's about 14 of us, and I was one of the young guns on the totem pole. And so it was like, hey, we need somebody in Baltimore, send Royal. We need somebody in Seattle tomorrow, send Royal. We need, it was just, it was constant. So, I mean, for multiple years there, I sat somewhere over 200, if not over 240 nights a year in hotels out of college. And that was for almost 5 years. So it was pretty crazy. But then from there, we went to one of the contractors that came on the military base. He hadn't done federal contracts before. And before I left, I had a meeting with a couple of the guys there, and I gave him a list. And he was like, "What's this?" And I said, "That's everything you didn't plan for in your bid."
Wow.
And he was like, "Oh, okay, no, we're good. We got this. We do this work all the time." I was like, "Okay, we'll see." And then I left, and I was coming up. The promotion required me to be at that office for 1 year. And after 1 year, I was pretty burned out on what I was doing. And I called that contractor because they were based out of Reno. We really enjoyed Reno. And it's like, I didn't know the gentleman that I'd given that list to was the vice president of the company. And so when I called and I asked for this guy, I thought I was just getting like a project engineer, project manager, not the vice president of the company. And he answers the phone, and I was like, "Hey, this is Royal. Maybe remember me up at the military base there." And he was like, he starts the conversation with, "Everything you said that could go wrong has gone wrong." And so it turned into a very interesting conversation of him essentially ranting for a good 15 minutes or more about all the treachery that has been going on. The civilian workers at the military base making their crews' lives hell, them, just expecting all these things outside the contract to be done, them delaying them massively. So they're like, anyway, it just turned into a thing. And so it was very interesting, and funny now to remember. But and then he stops it and he's like, "Hey, so why'd you call?"
Right.
And I was like, "Hey, well, I'm looking to get back to Reno." At that time, my wife, now she was just my fiance. We had met in Reno, so she'd moved to Walla Walla with me. And so I was like, "Hey, I'm just looking to get back to Reno." And he was like, "Send me your resume." So I sent him my resume, and he was like, 30 minutes later, I get a text message, "When can you be down for an interview?"
That's awesome.
And I was like, "I can take it like next Friday off if that works." And he's like, "All right, I'll have my secretary send you a ticket." So, I mean, literally they flew me down. I interviewed with them. We looked through their I would look through what had been going on. And I went, "Well, you have a direct situation of what's called ICLEI, which is they're delaying you with just reason with no justification or no end in sight. So here are all the things that you can go after them for. And I'm going to guess, based on just approximation on how many days they've delayed you, that's about $250,000 to $500,000. Wow. And I think that sealed the deal of whether or not they were going to hire me.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I just paid for myself, right?
Right, exactly.
So they hired me. They moved me back down to Reno. Absolutely fantastic company. I worked for them for about a year, and just absolutely loved it. Loved working with them. They did some great things. I worked on multiple bridges. Finished the project up on the military base. When I came in there, they were looking at projecting something like a negative 15% margin on $15 million and like a year and a half to complete their scope of work. Mm-hmm. And I hit the client with Eichli, and they immediately got out of our way, and we finished the project in like 5 months after I got there at like almost a 10% profit margin.
Wow.
So obviously a positive move.
Yeah.
So, that was really good. And then went from there, they had me working on bridge projects and working on stuff around Lake Tahoe. But there were two things that kind of almost happened back to back. One, I'd flown up to Oregon, and my grandfather was an engineer, and he had started an engineering firm. And my dad was running that engineering firm, and he let me know it was not going well. It was in a bad spot, and it was only getting worse. And he needed help. That was the easiest way to put it. And then shortly after that meeting, I let him know, I'm really loving where I'm at. I'm really loving the contractor that I work for. I'm loving the work that I'm doing. We love being in Reno. I don't know if I can help. And then I came back, and we won this big contract, very, very large contract. And, typically you have a chain of command, is the easiest way to put it, on a construction project, where you're going to have, a project manager, a project engineer, multiple field engineers, and some other, and then you've got all your guys. You got your foremen and your superintendents. We had the foremans and the superintendents, but on the office side of it, it was just me. And it was just me with a client they had never worked with, who was extremely difficult. And then that client had 5 people on their admin side. So all asking me questions, all expecting immediate responses, and so it turned into a multiple months of me talking to them, going, "Hey guys, I'm a little inundated here. It wouldn't matter if I had 27 hours in the day and 9 days a week. I'm not going to get done what they're asking me to get done, and get done what I need to do for my position, for me to keep this job running." And so kind of after a couple of months of that, we parted ways, and I literally was still sitting in the conference room of the construction company, and I called my dad and I said, "I'll see you in 2 weeks." That was it. Had to break the news pretty harshly to my wife. She didn't want to be leaving Reno, but she's an absolute champion and an amazing, amazing mother and wife, with Mother's Day coming up. I'm going to plug that one.
Plug it, yeah.
And she has 365 days a year. So we basically, she was like, "All right, this is what needs to happen." And we ended up basically living apart for 6 months. And during that time, if not more, it was more, I think it was right at 6 months. It was June until literally the week before Christmas was when she finally moved up there. And during that time, she got pregnant. I don't know how that happened, but we planned it. We planned it because we were planning on having kids, and she was like, "Well, now you're moving up there. It's the right time." I was like, "It's never going to be the right time." So she got pregnant with our first, and absolute blessing there. Went up, worked for that engineering firm. We grew that engineering firm, saved it from essentially closing its doors, grew it to bigger than
your families.
Yeah, the one that my grandfather founded. Grew it to bigger than it had ever been, and then in literally March and made multiple acquisitions. So we acquired 2 other companies. We merged with another, and we exploded. That's the easiest way to put it. I mean, they were they were about $1 million in debt and were close to closing. They were about $1 million in debt and they barely did $1 million in revenue. Not a good combo. So when I left there, I think my last year there, we were on track to be around 5 million. So, and they were, they were like $1 million, just over $1 million a year in revenue at like a 20% margin. And when I left them March of 2020, literally like 2 weeks before the COVID lockdown started, but we were looking just on the business that we had on the books and everything. We were probably going to be around 5 million at about a 40% margin. So pretty prominent increase. So, we, like I said, we grew the company from what it was to something much, much bigger, made multiple acquisitions, grew into more states. With that, we moved from Oregon to Spokane, Washington. And we lived in Spokane, Washington for a few years and then parted ways with them.
Before we continue there, where was the end of service with the Guard? At what point
that was in 2005. So literally right when I started, the year that I started back to engineering school. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, it was June of 2005 was my ETS, and then I started college in September. Yeah.
Was that like at all? Let's rewind to that point in time for a bit. So let's walk through that transition period when you finished your commitment there. What was that like? And was that all? I guess did you time that with school intentionally, or that just happened to be the case?
Yeah, no, it just happened to be the case. It was kind of just how the ETS worked out, and it was difficult. The military wasn't my identity, but it was definitely something I enjoyed doing, and it was. I think I was pretty. I would say I was young and immature, very young and immature when I signed up. Looking back, I probably would have waited and got a little more maturity and experience under my belt before signing on the dotted line. But, I wish I would have alternatively just stayed in, right, and kept it going. But there was a situation essentially at my unit that with them getting deployed and other stuff, I avoided a stop loss by literally a few days, where they let me know, like, if you get stop loss, you're not going anywhere for like 18 months and you can't go to school, and you're basically going to dress in uniform and come to our office every day for the next 18 months. You're not going to be able to have another job, and you're not going to be able to go to school. So I narrowly avoided being that, because then, my entire life basically would have gotten delayed 18 months. Right. And so it was again, kind of extremely lucky that things fell the way they did to a point. And I was able to make a fairly clean transition to serving, or from serving to going into school. Now, I will say, when I got down to Reno, that was 2009, and I found out that the Nevada National Guard was starting a combat engineers unit. And I was like, well, that's awesome. Here I have, 6 years of prior service. Granted, I didn't go to the advanced school because I couldn't get the medical waiver, but maybe we can figure something out. And I actually tried to go back, and I was working as a civilian directly for a colonel, and, was doing fairly well. And I actually tried to re-up into the Nevada National, is the Nevada National Guard or the Nevada Reserves? I can't remember exactly. I want to say it actually was the Reserves. Brought them in all my stuff and explained to them, like, hey, I had 6 years. I've got my degree in civil engineering. I work technically for the Department of Defense now. So, me getting time off of work to go train and stuff like that is fully allowed. And can we make this happen? And they let me know, because our president at the time, Obama, basically made it to where no prior service could re-up. You either had to, if you were a prior service, if you left service and you tried to come back, that was not an option, which really sucked. Because I was, now 27, 28 years old. I was very fit, and, now educated, now college degree, 6 years of experience. It's like, thought maybe that would work out. I fought that for about 6 months to try and find a way to get in. Even the colonel I worked for wrote letters. It was, you know, it was, I was fighting. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it.
That's pretty surprising to hear, like given your, all of your circumstance, right? Everything that you just added to your situation. I'm very surprised. I mean, I look at that and I see, wow, valuable asset. I don't really have to do anything except give this person a paper to sign. That's wild.
Yeah, it wasn't until I actually had a general call me. I want to say it was a brigadier. It might have been a major general call me and let me know to stop.
Mhm.
Like, let me know very cordially, like, there is nothing we can do for you. This is what is in the documents from the president of the United States. We can't bypass, like, there's no way for us to bypass this. We're sorry.
Wild. Oh.
So, at that point, I was like, okay, like, I refrained from saying, well, who's your boss? But
Right.
once you get into the stars, you're not going much higher. So
Right.
it was frustrating, but because I did want to do that service. But again,
Mhm.
I've really tried to with my prior company. We did, with the construction company I worked in, we did a lot of stuff for veterans. Obviously, when I was with the DoD, we worked directly with the military, and I did
Mhm.
everything I could for them. With my company now, we if it's a no, if a builder is doing a nonprofit home build, we donate the plans. That's just that we provide the full permit package plans. I know we're not to where I'm talking about what my company does, but if there's any builders or veterans that have a build, an HBA that listens to this, Home Builders Association listens to this, that needs a set of house plans for a veterans housing project, look me up. They're free.
Amazing. I might know someone I want to send that to in case there is relevance, and that's an amazing program that you have. Thank you for doing that. Before we move on to where we left off, I want to just kind of close out this transition period and touch on really just kind of advice you would give your former self. Now that you have you're older and you have hindsight.
Yeah. The biggest thing I would say that that got me from, obviously the rug kind of got pulled out from under me early on. I got to, some things happened there, and it's gotten pulled out from under me multiple times. So what? I guess it's the easy way to put it. So what? Like, I was a homeless kid. So what? I, didn't have the dad around when I was a kid. So what? Like, you can always find a way to succeed. And the resiliency is what it takes from it. And having that forward mission, having that forward vision to know, like, I am going to find a way to get from where I am today to where I want to be tomorrow. And that's all it is. One of my best books that I have on my bookshelf is my journal, of where I write in, by the end of this time next year or 3 years from now, this is where I'm going to be at, and this is where I want to be at. And then I refer back to that regularly to go, okay, I said I'm going to be here. Where am I today? Is it even possible anymore? And just keep on pushing for that.
That's awesome, man. That's really important advice that I think is applicable to a lot of stuff, a lot of circumstances in life. It reminds me of the concept kind of extreme ownership, and just really just taking ownership of your situation. Don't play the victim card, because exactly as you put it, so what, right? So
Right.
that's awesome. Really valuable, man. Thank you. All right. So let's get back to where we kind of left off before reversing. I believe that was 2020. It sounds like it was a minute before COVID hit.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'd done multiple mergers, acquisitions with my prior company, and we grew pretty big. And there were things that I could have done better, period, with that company. I came into a company that was fledgling. I mean, it was about to close its doors, and whether it was a situation of I need to find a way to get this succeed, or there was just an added extra of like, this is something my grandpa built, and my grandfather built, and now it's about to close its doors. Like, that doesn't sit well with me. Like, so I need to find a way to make this succeed. Well, we grew so quick. There were things in the foundation of the company that really needed to be worked on. You know, no harm to my grandfather, but like, we have a lot better ways of implementing systems and processes and streamlining stuff that, you know, exist today. You know, like your own program, right? There's tons of these programs available. None of that existed. It was archaic. Everything was still paper and folder. And, you know, that was essentially just gone back to the fact of that was the way they had done it. And it made it very, very difficult. So there were a lot of things with that systems and processes and organization that really should have gotten improved as we grew that didn't. And we kind of got to a point where it was pretty chaotic as we got to the time there where, and then it was, respectfully, it was something I was working on, but at that point we had so much work coming in, how many people all around, and trying to keep all the plates spinning and then I just didn't have the education of building those systems and processes and organizations and other stuff out that, you know, eventually it came to a head, and, you know, I was actually terminated. So I came back from a vacation to my first vacation in 5 years with that company, and I came back to a termination letter.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that was kind of interesting. Yeah, so that was interesting. That was like I said, that was 2 weeks before the 2 weeks before the COVID lockdown started.
Wow. So, something that you said in that story just was funny to me to hear, because it's something I still hear today, which is, well, this is how we do things, right? We're referencing, you know, pen and paper, you know, lack of systems or lack of updated systems. Always funny to hear, you know, granted, tons, I would even say majority of industry has evolved, at least to an extent. It's still prevalent. So it's funny to hear how, you know, the mindset still hasn't completely turned, but it will. It'll get there. Yeah. Anyway, so you get back from this vacation, man. That's crazy. What was that like? What happens?
Yeah. So, I mean, and at the time, again, I revere my wife as a champion. My wife had stepped in shortly after she had our first child because our office manager resigned. And it was a situation where we didn't have an office manager. My wife had been a teacher, and she was like, hey, you guys are going to lose an office manager. You have no systems and processes or anything in place. None of what your office manager does is documented. She just gave you your 2 weeks. Like, I'll be there tomorrow. Our daughter will be sitting in her car seat, but I'll be there tomorrow. I mean, that's literally what it was. And she did. She showed up. I mean, a couple-month-old baby chilling in the car seat, and she got after it. She learned everything she could from the office manager. She learned how everything learned it. I mean, crash course. I mean, not maybe a week to learn how everything was done. And so when I got fired, she got fired. So, you know, like I said, we come back from vacation, pour our heart and souls into this company that, you know, my grandfather founded. You know, they had a board. They were an S corp. They had a board. They had way too many people on the board, and with an average age of hospice. And you know, it was you know, it was difficult. The whole time I was there, it was always an uphill battle. And why do we need that? This is how we've done it. It's going to cost how much? How are we going to make that money back? Okay, here we go. Yeah. So, you know, it was that kind of battle the whole time. So, like I said, I take ownership of what I could have done better as the leader. Now, granted, I didn't get voted to president until literally 3 months before they terminated me. So I was kind of running things as almost like a COO position, and then they voted me to president, and then that was like 3 months, and then it was point the finger at him because he's
that's crazy, man.
It's you know, I get proportionate to blaming Trump for what the prior 10 presidents did. So the business had been around for 40 years. So prior to me coming in, it's like, okay, go. So sweet. Like, you know, yeah. Like, wow. So anyway, so that like 2 weeks before COVID, and the company I have now, Pliris, was actually supposed to be a subsidiary of the company that I was terminated from. And the reason we did that was there was a we had multiple engineers there that wanted the primary company to focus on commercial, even though we, had fledged in commercial, and the only way we actually became a profitable company again was going after residential and specialty projects and a variety of other things. They didn't care about any of that. They just wanted to focus on the big commercial stuff. And if it wasn't big commercial stuff, it was boring to them. And I'm like, okay, well, financially, that's what pays you guys every month and keeps the lights on. And you're saying fire all those clients. So I came up with the idea. I was like, what if we start a subsidiary company that we basically focuses on these clients, more prominently residential builders, and we basically can hire college interns or fresh graduates and put them into this company where we can train them on simpler processes like designing a residential home, engineering of a residential home, engineering of smaller things before we go and we throw them on a big, couple 100 square foot warehouse. Say, here you go. Like, so that was the intent. And so when they let me go, after, discussing with them on stuff, and because I was an owner in the company too, so they had to eventually, they'd buy me out and other stuff. But they said flat out, like, this idea of Pliris, yeah, you can just take that. Like, that's yours. We don't want anything to do with it.
Bingo.
And so, I mean, and I still remember when it happened. We literally got, like I said, we didn't even get an actual letter. When I say we got a letter, no, we didn't get a letter, termination. We got an email. Yeah, it's quality. We got an email, and then, like I said, my dad was on the board, and he didn't respond to any text messages. So I was like, okay, this is cool. So anyways, we were like, all right. My wife was like, what are we going to do? Like, she saw me, and I literally grabbed my computer bag of stuff, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to work. Like, and she's like, but no, we were just fired. And I was like, no, we were fired from there. Like, I have another business we can get going right away, and I need to get to work on that. So, I mean, I didn't even have enough time to think about it to drink a full cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how literally quickly I went from cool, let's go do some shit. I mean, it's awesome. It's no different than what they train you when they train you in training. Like, you're getting shot at. Like, okay, I can return violence of action. Period. Like, there's no, hey guys, like, ooh, Mike got shot. What are we gonna do? Like, holy shit, Mike got shot. We got shit to take care of. Like, that's it. That was it. Like, I mean, that you just go. I mean, if that resiliency I get again, if I hadn't had the prior military stuff, just being able to look at tragedy and say, that sucks. We got to move forward.
Yeah.
Like, there was no tears shed. There was no anger. Like, there was nothing. It was
yeah, man,
it was just straight face. And like, my wife's like, what about this? And what about that? I'm like, hey, it's going to work out. There's never been a problem that hasn't been solved by sales and hard work. So let's get after it. Like, that's it. And that's where we went. So,
that's the way. And I'll plug that as a translatable skill, military to profession, right? That resiliency that you just talked about, right? Something, dramatic happened, right? You got let go, in a crazy way from this company that you just helped build up, and immediately you pivot, recognizing opportunity that was just sitting there for you. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah. And I say this, like, I was a wrestler. I trained jiu-jitsu. I trained Muay Thai. Gotten kicked in the face a lot, figuratively and literally. You don't have time to shed a tear and rub your wounds. Like, you kicked in the face. Cool. We're fighting. Let's go. Like, that's how it is. This is business. This is life. The final bell is going to be the tone on my EKG that there's no heartbeat left. Like, that's the final bell. That's it. That's it. So we're going until then. So that's how it was. And I mean, that's kind of crazy, but now what I'll say is, Pleris is now bigger. We've been around for 4 years. So we essentially launched March of 2020. Pliris is now bigger than what my prior company was.
Amazing.
We're bigger. We're in more states. We're bigger profits wise. And what we're not bigger is team member wise. I don't have employees, I have team members. Because I built in all the processes and protocols and SOPs and everything from the very beginning. I made that foundation strong. And I didn't even market for work until I knew that the foundation that I had in place could support the work I was going after. And that was key because I ran lean. We still run lean. And we've put in now a massive project management system and project tracking system to where yesterday I submitted a proposal for house plan services to the 5th largest builder in the US. And I know if he came to me tomorrow and said, it's 100% yours, go, we can do it. I mean, that's over 30,000 houses a year. So
goes to perfect example of how process management, which, I would suggest that's a pretty fundamental principle of just how military operates, right? Is processes, having those in place, having structure, to then build off of. So that's an awesome example that, you are able to take your life learnings, and improve on, the downfalls of what you weren't able to do, whether it was, up to you or not, and implement that in your business. That's amazing.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is our team runs on what I call a squad model, which military guys will fully understand. So that squad model mentality, and here's the other thing with, military teaches you leadership, business teaches you leadership, tons of books can teach you about leadership, but there's a lot of people that train leadership that will say this: I don't know your business, but I know leadership, and it doesn't matter. Because I don't need to know the ins and outs of your business to know the leadership is not right? How you guys have your systems, processes, and protocols in place. I don't need to know all of the ins and outs of your business. And so one thing that we run, and this is something I've coached some other business owners on, is a squad model, which is you're not going to outlearn leadership structure of the military. They've got hundreds of years and trillions of dollars in training into the psychology and everything of leadership. You're not going to somehow find some new magical method to implement leadership that is going to work better than what the military has, period. Not going to happen. So we run on a squad model. Our firm is predominantly, basically squad model is your main point of contact, your squad leader. You've got a team leader. They've got 2 team members that work for them that specialize in something. You've got another team leader and 2 people who work for them that specialize in something. And you can keep adding 1 and 2. One team lead, the responsible person, and the 2 workers. 1 team lead, 2 work. I don't care what your industry is. Like you can break it down into, I got this and this, or I got 3 of them, or I got 4 of them. Okay. If I got 3 of them, I still have 1 squad. I've just got 3 team leaders. I got 4 of them. Guess what? Now I got 2 squads. So that's how you structure it. And then with us, we function off of the National Association of Home Builders regional breakdown, right? So they took the entire United States and broke it into 15 regions. And within those 15 regions, they're pretty categorized as to what the common construction methods are, what the common code requirements are, and common climates and other stuff like that. And so I've got a squad. We take region 15. Region 15 is our biggest region right now: Oregon, Washington, California, Idaho. Region 15. Okay. I got a squad. I add another, I got a squad. That squad can service so many builders. I've got my client coordinator as my squad leader. That's the kind of the person that's talking from the clients to disperse information to the team leaders. And then those team leaders delegate the responsibilities and work to their people within them. So you can take that model and you can apply it to any industry. And the great part about it is I go, okay, I've now maxed you guys out to where maybe my team lead is actually in charge of 3 people. My team lead on each crew is actually in charge of 3 people. second it gets to 4 people, I need to be starting another squad.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to look at that and go, which one of my team members within that team can be a team leader? Now there's team leader of my next squad. And then I'm going to fill in people behind that. And same thing here. And then, add another squad leader. And then it's just incrementally grow. And eventually you do that, because you can't have one person typically cannot be in charge of any more than 3 people, period.
Mm-hmm.
And then the stuff that's happening with the people way, way down that food chain. I was talking with somebody and they were telling me like their company had 150 people and every single one of the people on their staff had his number. Like, does that make you feel special? Like, because that's a horrible, horrible way to run a company.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the decision maker, if you're the person that's doing that and you're the person, like, that's a horrible, horrible way to make the decisions. Let the other people make the decisions.
Right.
Like, you need to get that substructure in there so other people can make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And, and have other people be accountable and have the systems and processes that make it simple for them to delegate the work and have SOPs for them to execute the work and have, KPIs to know what the performance is expected. And
exactly.
Keep it all down there. If the platoon leader, or if the platoon leader or the company, the company commander had to deal with private schleppy every time he overslept, that'd be a really, really poorly run company. Like that's not okay. Let the team lead kick private schleppy up. Like, nobody else needs to know about it. That's it.
Absolutely agreed, man. Absolutely agreed. So great way of putting it. Totally with you, and absolutely agree. That reminds me of a book I read, Team of Teams. I don't know if you're familiar with that, and it kind of just describes, or it's more or less what you're saying is how you apply military structure into business, and it doesn't matter what industry or business you're in. So what you just said reminded me of that. If I remember correctly, I mean, I read this a few years back, so I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was a general. I think it was a general of SOCOM for however long. So anyways, what you were saying reminded me of that book, which is exactly the same concept, more or less. Yeah, well said, man. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about, Pliris, what the company does and what the different divisions do.
Yeah. So within Pleris, we have 2 separate companies. They're both served by the same team right now. But Pleris is our house plan management for builders, and we can also partner with architects on this. But basically, we work with home builders who need any level of assistance. But when I was a home builder, I really got annoyed with the engineering firms and really felt I was underserved. Well, we were underserved, and you couldn't get a straight answer of why things were the way they were with your engineering. And this engineer, you got all this stuff, and this engineer, you don't. I saw the exact same thing when I was on the design side. And like I said, my prior firm basically wanted to fire all of our residential builders and specialty clients and just focus on commercial. And so I created a firm that focuses on homes. That's what we do. All we do is new residential. I mean, all we do is new residential. We've started picking up ADUs now, accessory dwelling units, because that's basically a brand new building as well. But that is our focus. And townhouses are still under the residential code. Essentially anything under the residential code, that's our focus. And we have training and everything for our team members to really understand how contractors prefer to build homes, how to build them efficiently, and then how we engineer those efficiently. And so with our builders, we basically, it's not engineering. I refer to it as house plan management, because we go through it. We have our own in-house library of about 4,000 house plans that builders can add to their library, or we just take over their library. We build them an SOP of how they like to build their homes. So, we've got builders that are more in the inexpensive track house style that use a single 2x member for a header. And we've got higher end builders that every header is a glulam member. We've got builders all levels in between. And so we set up that SOP. So we're engineering into the SOP. And we service builders where we're providing just the engineering. We service builders where we're providing just the architectural and the engineering. So we're doing all new concept plan development, or we're managing all the code as codes change on plans. We go through, make sure the plans are all up to code, or as they grow into other states, we help them with that. And then we have what we call the Pliris package, which we learn to do everything. So we do the site plan, we do the architectural, we do any specialty elements that the jurisdiction may require, as far as like mechanical, electrical, plumbing design, or in California, Title 20, or Washington, and energy analysis. We do all that in-house, and then as well as all the engineering. And then that's Pleris's focus. Within Pleris, we're already approaching about 1,000 houses this year. So
amazing.
We're licensed in over 20 states right now. But what's nice with engineers licenses, once I'm at this many licenses, for me to get a license in another state, it takes like a couple of weeks. It's a pretty quick process. So if we get a builder or somebody that wants to build their own home, and they're like, well, I'm in Massachusetts, well, give me 2 weeks and I'll be licensed in Massachusetts, and then we're off to the races. But so that's Pliris. Pliris Plans is basically the plan library that we have access to. So we partner with other home designers or house plan websites. But the big difference between what you're going to find on another house plan website is us is when you buy a house plan on another website, you're buying just the plan. You're buying the concept. You're buying the drawing, right? You can't take that and go submit it for permits and build that house. There's other things that have to be done, especially engineering. So we do all of that. So that's why we call it Pliris Plans. Pliris is Greek for complete. So it's complete plans. So again, the service that we offer to our builders, we can also offer on individual plan sets. And then the other thing that's really awesome, and why these house plan websites like working with us, is we pay them exactly what they're marketing them for on the website. So they're getting 100% of their licensing fee. And the reason being is we're doing the continuation, we're doing the engineering, we're doing the site plans, we're doing all that completion work. That's where we make our money. So we want to pay the artist. The artist earned that money. You know, they created it. So we want to make sure that they're getting paid. We're taking care of it. You know, as I put it, like you buy a painting, well, cool. Now it's got to get delivered to your house. It's got to get hung on the wall. Lighting's got to get installed. We do all that other stuff. We're kind of a one-stop shop to do that.
That's amazing value add, man. I mean, at least in my experience, those are the kinds of things that fall through the cracks, and they fall through the cracks and then make significant kind of gaps in time and coordination and just loss of understanding. So that's really an amazing concept. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been, like I said, it's been very, very rapid growth. It's pretty amazing. I mean, last year was a record year for us, and we're already up almost 100% from where we were at this time last year. So
amazing.
It's been really awesome. And like I said, we built out those systems and processes and hired correctly. So it's been great.
So I want to, as we close out kind of the business element, right? Your career side of things. I want to give you might have just done it, right? But I'll give you the opportunity anyways to plug a career win. And that can mean really just whatever you want it to, right? It could be a moment, it could be your business, whatever it may be. Yeah.
So, well, I'll plug something else here. So the biggest thing I would say that has been the step, resiliency is a massive one. But the biggest thing I would say that has been the massive step, the difference between me not being successful and being successful, is correct decision making. And so I have a metrics that I use, or an acronym that I use, called PROFITS, and it has nothing to do with money. Okay. And so what PROFIT stands for is pain, risk, ownership, fear, ikigai, time, and spouse. And so your pain is your daily schedule. Okay. People make decisions all the time, and they already have a full daily schedule, and they don't account for it properly. They don't time block their time, and they'll make a decision to put more on their plate than when they don't have it. They've exceeded their pain threshold. People need to account for their pain threshold a lot better. Look at your 24-hour day. Everybody has a 24-hour day. Okay. I need 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Take that away. I need 1 to 2 hours for workout and personal development. Take that away. I need 1 to 2 hours with my kids. Take that away. Like, take those things away and then look at what you have left. And if you're looking at taking something on and you got nothing left in the bucket, nothing left in that blocking, guess what? You don't have that pain threshold. Risk is everybody's risk is a tangible you can calculate. Every decision has a risk associated with it. Balance your risk. If you're jumping everything into high risk, it's going to bite you, and it's going to hit your pain threshold big time. Because when you have something that takes too much risk, eventually, if it starts to fail, you need more time to address it, and you got to hit something in your pain threshold. Ownership, that's just you taking ownership or you bringing on partners, and be diligent about the partners you bring on to manage this. Fear is probably the only thing that really is again, personal choice. I have a very, very high fear threshold. If I can make the pain work and it balances with my risk, I'm not really scared if it fails or if it doesn't fail, or if it fails or if it succeeds, right? I'm going to go for it. Ikigai, that's a Japanese term of basically finding something that aligns with you, with your goals, your visions, your passions. If it doesn't align with what makes you happy, it's an immediate no. So that's the big thing. Time is not your time in the day. It's how long it's going to take until you get that return that you're expecting, that you're anticipating. Some investments you're back in a year. Other investments take decades. What are you willing to do for it? And then spouse, frankly, the spouse is the number one decision you're going to make in your life. So don't take on things and do things that the spouse that you visualize in your head in the future is going to be a negative for them. This goes for guys and gals. You can make a lot of money having weed shops and an OnlyFans. Is that the type of person that, like, who you're visualizing in your head that you want to spend the rest of your life with? Is that the type of person that they want to be married to? So that's the biggest thing. So that's my biggest difference. And I would say that's the biggest difference, the biggest change from me, Pliris blowing up and, my business industry blowing up and my being able to spend more time with my kids, not being worried about money, having tons of time with my wife and having an amazing marriage was implementing that. And that drives every decision about my business and my personal life every day.
That's awesome, man. You made that up, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I developed that. Nice. Yeah. Book forthcoming.
Oh,
I've already spoken about it at some masterminds, and all of them are like, "Where's the book?" Okay.
I was getting to that exact point, right? I was going to say, that's a book in its own right. Wow, yeah. Amazing, man. That's really cool. Awesome. So, closing out the business side of things, career, we touched on our last two questions. First being your wellness practice. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I just went through a crazy bout last year. For 18 months, I was sick about 1 week out of the month. And it was all due to crap in our food. So I went through a pretty significant regimen of repairing my gut. And I can tell you, I was 245 pounds about 9 months ago. I'm 195 right now. I haven't been sick since I went on that repair regimen. So gut health is huge. Diet is huge. I eat a very clean diet. Essentially, if it's got ingredients, I'm not eating it. That's the easiest way to put it. So, yeah. So I'm very, very clean eating with that. I work out pretty much every day. I'm in my mid 40s now, so more of my workouts are in regards to just body flow and control. Although I did do a Murph prep today for some reason that was. I'm going to try and do Murph this year, so I got a good gauge of where I'm at, and it's not pretty. So I don't run. My cardio is jujitsu, so that's that. So the run part was the most difficult part. Everything else I think I was good on, but the run part was rough. So and then the train jujitsu. That's
awesome, man. That's pretty holistic, and congratulations on realigning yourself after what you just explained was, I think you said 18 months. That's really rough.
Yeah. And trying to, and during that time we were moving from Spokane, Washington to Florida and, trying to run a company with all of that. And literally being to the point of essentially bedridden for,
Yeah.
3 to 7 days out of the month. It was
Wow.
rough.
Yeah, that is rough. Congrats for coming out of that strong and being able to talk about it too. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's if anybody's interested, if anybody's struggling with it, I can get you in contact with the lady that helped me. She did a fantastic job. So it was great.
Awesome. Last but not least, favorite book or books, or just a book that you'd like to recommend?
By far. Magic of
Awesome.
Thinking Big. By far. This is it's tabbed to no end. I open it weekly and refer to things. By far the fantastic book. And I mean, I can look at, I've got a book, or I've got, a small bookshelf behind the camera here. Extreme Ownership is in there. Powerful, which was written by the HR director for Netflix, on basically how they run a company differently. That was amazing. That taught me so much to look at things differently with team members and running a company, and how I could structure Pliris to be better and different. And then the Marcus Aurelius Journal. Those are fantastic books. But honestly, the one that really kicked me in the butt and made me do homework on getting to where I am today, and where, will get me to where I'm going to be in 10 years from now is this. So
that's awesome, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Royal, thanks so much for jumping on, for taking the time to share your story. Really appreciate it. Really inspiring. I'm excited to see where you're going to be in a few years from now.
I really appreciate the opportunity. So, and I hope this helps somebody. So
absolutely. I'm sure it will. I'm excited to see you continue growing with Pleris and everything else that you do. To our listeners and our subscribers, thank you for listening. A reminder to please subscribe if you haven't. YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. A quick shout out to our sponsors, Jet.Build, and we will see you all soon. Thank you. Thank you to our channel sponsors, Jet.Build. If you're looking for ways to better manage your real estate development and construction projects, look no further. Jet is the command center software for end-to-end real estate development and construction management. That's www.jet.build.